There were four paintings here um, done by Sir John Lavery, and the painting in the middle of the south wall is Sidney F. Tyler, and he was Mrs. Montgomery's father. And the Laverys came here to paint the four commissions and ended up staying and painting a lot of people on the main line because they liked Ardrossan so much. Lady Lavery was an American. She was from Chicago, but she really loathed Americans. She thought them vulgar and tacky, and she hated coming back to America. So when she came to Ardrossan and liked it, Sir John Lavery said, "Can we just stay here and use the Ardrossan as our base?" So they ended up doing quite a few paintings of people in Radnor during that time. Lady Lavery, you might know because her image was on the Irish banknote for years and years. And of course she was rumored to have had an affair with Michael Collins, which I think, the Irish revolutionary, and I think that's been disproven now. But it was a very exciting time here at Ardrossan. This is Hope Montgomery Scott, and it's the second of three paintings painted of her. It was painted by Augustus John, and this particular painting is considered one of his masterpieces. Now this is Mary Binney Montgomery Wheeler, and this was painted in Paris by Zulaga. Obviously it's the largest painting in the house. And Zulaga was known for his portraits of European royals, and he really was not interested in painting what he thought was a Philadelphia dilettante. And there was a lot of negotiating back and forth, and he did not agree to paint the painting until he met his subject, and she charmed him. And she was a reluctant sitter, actually. She wasn't really interested in having her portrait done, and he initially not interested in painting it, and obviously it's one of the most magnificent in the house. And she was a member of the first class at the Curtis Institute. She was there for 4 years, and learned to play the piano, recorded with Leopold Stokowski, and with the Philadelphia Orchestra. She then formed her own dance company. She was really quite ahead of her time. She did quite a lot for modern dance in Philadelphia, was the choreographer for the Philadelphia Opera Company, and then really hadn't met the man of her dreams as yet, but wanted to be a mother. So she did something that women just didn't do in her day. She adopted first one and then a second daughter. And then it wasn't until a few years later that she met John Pierce Wheeler and fell in love, and then he adopted her daughters. And the life of Mary Binney is really really deserves its own book. After he died, she decided to focus on photography, and she became an accomplished photographer, and her collection of photographs of India and Sri Lanka are at the University of Pennsylvania, and it's the largest collection of its kind anywhere. The Mary Binney Wheeler image collection, if you Google it or look it up, it's really quite extraordinary, and you can listen to the sound of her voice narrate the photographs, talk about the photographs. This painting is a Halmy. It was painted. It was the first portrait of the family done this is Mrs. Montgomery. It was the first portrait brought here when the house was completed. It was begun before she was pregnant with her last child, and she was afraid that she was going to be showing. So they put a pedestal in front of her and a veil, a shawl, and then it was discontinued until after the last child was born, and then she resumed posing for it. This is the Montgomerys' only son, Alexander Montgomery, and This was painted by William Orban in London, and it was one of the last portraits that Orban painted before his death. Orban had been an illustrator and a World War I battlefield artist. They had such things then, and Alexander Montgomery was very, very interested in Orban's work, and they really hit it off and became friends, the artist and the subject. This is Charlotte Ives Montgomery, and this was painted here in the house by Philippe de Laszlo, and de Laszlo absolutely hated being here because he couldn't get Ives off of her horse. She was not interested in having her portrait done at all. He took other commissions while he was here to fill his time, and ultimately ended up using Mrs. Montgomery to sit in for the torso. And as he mentions in his diary, one of her sisters, but does not name which one, for the hands. Finally, he was able to complete the portrait, and it too is considered by the de Laszlo archive as one of his masterpieces. What you should also take note of is when Mrs. Montgomery did the needlepoints, she needlepointed a lot of things, to include the sofas. This was completed in 1937, and there are her initials: Charlotte Hope, Binney, Tyler, Montgomery. These are pretzel-back Chippendale chairs, quite rare, believed to have been made here in Philadelphia. This is a portrait of Mrs. Montgomery and her brother as children, obviously. This was actually copied from a photograph, which was kind of a thing that was done in that day and age. People would like a particular photograph and then have an artist paint it. This was done by Charles Morris Young. It's the Radnor Hunt on the south lawn of the property. It was done on Christmas Day. There was always a Christmas Day fox hunt here. Interesting about the Montgomerys, they go back to the very core of the nation in the sense that they were among the very earliest people in America, certainly the Mayflower Society and all of that that goes along with it. So in Philadelphia, through marriage, they are second cousins, Colonel and Mrs. Montgomery, and their mutual great-grandfather was Horace Binney, who is considered by many to be the father of Philadelphia law. I mean, he argued some very heady cases before the Supreme Court. In fact, was asked twice to be Chief Justice of our Supreme Court. This is Robert Wallen, and of course that name is also synonymous with Philadelphia hierarchy. The paintings in this room are some of the oldest ancestors of the Montgomerys, and that was in keeping with the English tradition of putting the ancestral portraits that were most prized in the dining room and or the library in English country houses.